Welcome to Still with Purpose. This is Amanda and Christy.
Our goal is to dig deep and discuss real, raw subjects in pursuit of greater self-awareness, positive transformation, and healing, and to link arms and journey with you as we discover purpose and passion in life together.
Before we jump in, we'd like to ask if Still with Purpose has ever helped you feel seen, encouraged you to heal, helped you to breathe a little deeper, think differently, or reminded you that you're not alone. Please take a moment to follow the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone you believe would get great value from it.
That simple act helps this message reach more humans, and we are so grateful for every single one of you walking this journey with us. We're so glad you're here. Let's get into today's conversation. Welcome back this week. We are super excited. This is our very first episode of our Answered Prayers series. We introduced this series last week and talked about all the many reasons why we want to bring positive and uplifting faith-building stories to you. And our very first guest is Ronda Davis. She is a dear friend of mine. I have the honor of worshiping with her at church, and I get to see Ronda do all the many leadership things that she does within the church body. She's always the first one to offer to pass things out at a Bible study or serve others food or do financials. I mean, you name it. Ronda's all hands on deck at all times. She's also very emotionally strong, which you'll hear. So we were honored to have Ronda here today to share the story about her mom, her recent illness, and the miraculous recovery she made and that God carried her and her family through. And can't wait to have Ronda share all the amazing details. So with that, hi, Ronda.
Hi. First off, I'm not sure how emotionally strong I am. Starting to think about this again has brought back all of the emotion. So I'm going to do what I can not to cry.
Understandable completely.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot. So let's go back to the beginning. We got together at Christmas and my children were there with their significant others and my parents. And John, my stepdad, felt kind of sick that day and we didn't think much about it. And by Sunday, the 28th, they both went to urgent care and they found out they had the flu. On Tuesday, my husband went up to their house to check on them and mom was sitting up in bed and with her usual sassy little self basically said, "I'm fine. I don't need your soup. Go away."
That sounds like your mom.
Exactly like her. So fast forward to Friday, I had left her alone. I usually call twice a day on the way to work, on the way home. And I was leaving her alone because I knew she didn't feel well. So I just let her sleep and I would just text her to check on her. Well, she hadn't really been responding. So I was off that day. That was January 2nd. I went up after I did a couple of things at home to check on them. She was laying on the couch under a blanket in the fetal position, didn't really respond. And I said, "I'm really concerned. We really need to go to the ER." My husband had to come help me carry her to the car. She was so weak and just sick. We went to Northwest in Springdale and they immediately took her back and started taking her vitals and blood work. And I heard them announce over the speaker they had someone that might be septic. And I looked at the nurse and I said, "Is that her?" They said, "Yes." So that really started to concern me. And then they started asking questions about how much Tylenol she had been taking. And long story short, they discovered that she, over a period of time, started to overdose on Tylenol. So we started an antidote to try to start reversing the Tylenol effects, but they said that she was going into liver failure. During that time, we were in the ER, and by the time they actually got us into a room, they moved her to ICU, and it was 2:30 in the morning. So my stepdad and I went home around 3 a.m. We decided we would go back the next morning to check on her and then maybe go home and get some more rest. We got there between 9 and 9:30. My cousin was already there and they were telling us they wanted us to transport her to Little Rock to UAMS. So I had to make the decision to go ahead and transport her. My kids were able to make it there to say goodbye to her. At this point, she was lethargic lethargic. She did not respond to us at all. I looked at the ICU nurse and said, is she going to even make it to Little Rock? They assured me she would. She did. They also advised us to go ahead and pack and spend the night at home and then just drive down the next day. So my cousin and my aunt, they went down that night to be with her. And that was a comfort for me because I knew there would be somebody there. So I went to bed around 9:30 because I was just exhausted. Well, I started getting phone calls from UAMS, from the doctors. The first doctor gave us really grim news. He said she was in acute liver failure and that she was not likely to come out of it. So that was devastating to us. And at that point, we felt there was no hope. We started calling all of the family in. My uncle came from Utah. The next morning, we drove down. I really don't remember much about the trip. My cousin being in the parking garage and leading us up to ICU to see her. Also overnight, I had to agree for them to intubate her without sedative because they didn't want to give her any more sedative because it would cause further damage to her liver. So they did that, and they ended up going ahead and giving her a mild sedative because she, I guess, was aware enough that she fought against the tube. Once we got down there, I've got numbers here, and I don't really know what these are, but the AST for a normal liver function is 15 to 41. And then the ALT is 4 to 45. Her AST on the 3rd of January was over 6,000 at one point. All they could say is that it was above this number because it was so high. They couldn't even tell you exactly what it was. They couldn't test it that high.
Wow.
And then the ALT was in the 4,000 range. Her ammonia levels were in the 200s and normal is 11 to 35. So she was very, very sick. We did not expect her to make it. So I started kind of as a stress relief, something to just kind of help me get through it. I just started typing out prayer requests and I would send it to Brother Gary and Annette in one text. And then I would send a family group text and then I would post it on Facebook to everyone. And within those first few days, her numbers started going down. So on January the 3rd, I told you, like up in the upper 5,000s and ammonia was 200. By January the 9th, she was in the 114 range for the AST, which was the 6,000s. For the ALT, she was in the 600 range, which was in the 4,000s before. And her ammonia had gone down from 200 down to 38. So I started feeling like these specific prayers that we were asking were getting results.
Yeah.
Like I wrote down several things that were answered prayers, her liver enzymes and her ammonia levels. When they extubated, we wouldn't have to do a tracheotomy. They didn't have to do that. I prayed that she would be able to get back to the quality of life that she had at Christmas time. And she's very close. Christy has seen her. She sees, the amazing results.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we didn't know if she would wake up. And she woke up, she was coherent. High ammonia levels will cause brain swelling. And they showed us on the CT scan that her brain was completely white. And a normal brain for her age, you should be able to see these dark valleys on the brain scan. And so our last day that we were in Little Rock, she was down there she was there a week from Saturday to Saturday. And then they transported her back to Northwest in Springdale. The doctors were very clear with us and they did not mince words. She is very, very sick. The liver specialist came through and he said, this is the worst Tylenol injury that I have ever seen recover.
Amazing.
So yeah, everything that happened continued to be just a series of miracles. When she woke up, you asked her to squeeze your hand and she would do it. You asked her a second time just to make sure it wasn't a fluke. She did it again. She would wiggle her toes. She did everything, wiggled her eyebrows. She did everything that we asked of her. So we knew that she was still there.
Mm-hmm.
She just couldn't talk because of the tube. I know that there were several prayers that weren't answered the way that I would have preferred, but they were answered in the way that I think God planned. I had hoped that she would be transferred back up to Washington Regional because I work in Fayetteville and Washington Regional is closer for me. So I was thinking I could go by at lunch. I could go by before work. Well, they ended up transporting her back to Springdale Springdale, which my cousin works in Springdale, and she took a burden off of me because she was the one that would go up there at lunch. And it helped me to be able to have a little piece of normalcy in the middle of, driving back and forth and having short days at work.
Which you probably desperately needed at that time.
Yes,
you didn't know to pray for that, right?
Oh, absolutely not. I was just thinking, this is what I need in order for me to be able to be there. And he was like, time out. We've got someone else that can help take this burden off of you. So you're not going to get your way this time. And I mean, I'm glad.
Yeah.
One thing in particular, first of all, everyone was so amazing. People on Facebook kept saying, I really, truly appreciate all of these specific prayer requests that you give because we know exactly what to pray for. And those things seem to improve every single time that I would put those specific prayers out there. Again, there were a few things that I was like, this is what I want. And God would say, no, this is what you get. One thing in particular, Mom was delirious at one point in the hospital and she pulled her feeding tube out of her nose. So they were talking about inserting a peg tube, which is basically a feeding tube that goes into your stomach. And they were going to do that on Friday. Well, Friday rolled around and in my mind, I'm thinking, God, please let her make it through this procedure. Please let her be okay under, anesthesia. Please let her make it through this peg tube insertion. Well, the doctors come in and they say, we can't do it because she's on too high a level of oxygen. So we're going to have to wait until Monday. And so I'm like, kind of disappointed. I'm like, I just want this over with. We need to get this over with so that she can get nutrition and start getting stronger. One of my best friends came to me and she said, I prayed for her to not even have to have that peg tube. By Monday, they were saying she doesn't have to have that peg tube. So just things like that just kept showing me that sometimes I was not thinking outside the box. I was so laser focused on things and I wasn't thinking of the right things to pray about, but other people were praying and God was listening to what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And we were getting better results than what I could have requested.
And it sounds like God was placing a burden on other people's heart of what to pray for.
Yeah, because I didn't think to pray for her not to even need the peg tube. I just was praying that she could make it through the procedure. And my friend's like, I just prayed she wouldn't need it at all. And I was like, didn't even think about that one. So yeah.
And this is all after the doctors had told you basically there's no hope, right? Like come and say your goodbyes.
Yeah. All of our family came down and we were going to say goodbye. I did not expect anything less than going down there to say goodbye. And so for her to have such a complete turnaround was amazing. She was in the hospital for 50 days between January 2nd and February 20th. Today is 48 days later after she got out of the hospital. So since that time, she started out with a walker. She had it for a very short period of time, right, Christy?
Yeah, it
very short period. Yeah. She's graduated to a cane, which she basically most of the time just carries it in her hand and doesn't even actually use it. I mean, she's amazing. She's stubborn and she's definitely not where she was at Christmas time. But they told us for every day that you're in the hospital, it's a week of recovery. So I keep telling her it's going to be Christmas before you're really 100% again. But she has made such great strides. She has, I think, 2 more physical therapy sessions before she's done with that. She's doing amazing.
And if you know Rhonda's mom, Becky, I mean, she's the woman who she'll make the funny remark. She is stubborn, like in the best way. She's headstrong.
Sometimes in the worst way.
I only see the best, but she's just such a joy to be around. And I see that spark every time I see her. She's back.
Well, I can say that what I mean by in the worst way, she really stressed me out because she was very insistent that she was getting out of the hospital on the 20th. And the physical therapist wanted her to stay until the 27th. And she was adamant, I am not staying. I'm going home. So I was nervous. I was concerned. I was worried she was going to fall. But I needed to keep in mind, and this is what I struggle with, that God's got this. and she's been okay. She has not had any issues whatsoever. None.
It's so hard to just surrender it all to God with our fears. And we want to make sure that we're doing all we can, but it's really all about Him doing all that He wants to do.
Exactly.
And just to be clear, so she was struggling from liver failure, but she was prescribed Tamiflu, right? And so she had been taking Tylenol like as anyone would, and then was taking Tamiflu, which also has the same ingredients, right?
Correct. She had a back injury years ago when I was a teenager, and her doctor told her stop taking ibuprofen because it's not good for your kidneys. So she stopped that and she switched to Tylenol, but she was using extra strength Tylenol. And so she would take like 4 at a time, which is 2,000 milligrams. And over the course of time, that built up and was too much. And she didn't think to tell her doctor when the doctor would say, what medications are you taking? She would just list off her thyroid pill, her albuterol, things like that. She wouldn't think to say, oh, yeah, I'm taking this over the counter stuff too.
Yeah.
So they never had a need to check that until she was so sick that, the Tamiflu on top of the Tylenol, I think kind of tipped her over the edge.
Yeah, I wouldn't even think about it. Most people wouldn't.
No, but everybody around me is very aware now.
Yeah. Gosh, and to be so serious too. Just when you got that phone call late at night saying there's nothing else we can do, I can't imagine the feelings.
It was gut wrenching. That's when, after we got off the phone with the doctor, I told Sean, my husband, that we needed to start calling all of the family. And I said, we'll call the boys first, our kids. And I said, once we call the kids, then we can divide and conquer and call everyone else. I couldn't make it past hello before I broke down. And poor Sean, he had to call everyone, and every single phone call, I just broke down every time. And I don't know how he made it through because it was rough. I know we called Brother Gary and Annette, and I mean, every single call, it was just a fresh wound. It was hard.
Yeah. For those that don't know, Brother Gary and Annette, that's my mom and dad. My dad is our pastor. And I know they, talking about being in prayer constantly for you and your mom and everyone involved. We all were. But, in that moment where you were feeling that gut punch of she's not going to be okay, when you look back on that moment now and you think about God was about to perform a miracle, but, you had no idea. Like I think about that and I need to say, Christy, just wait and watch. We don't know what God is up to.
I can tell you there have been a handful of times over the course of my life where I have not been able to carry the burden. It has been way too much for me. And the only thing I can do is say, God, carry me. This is one of those moments. I could not pray. I could not take the burden. So I handed the burden off to God, and I sent messages out to all of the people that I knew would pray for her. And it has been absolutely amazing how many people, even people that I would see at Walmart later, would say, how's your mom? Our church has been praying for her. And I didn't even know that she was on this particular church's prayer list. You don't realize how far the reach can be until after you see the results of it, And
it also seems like God really proved that when, like you did, you just handed it over to Him. That's Him showing, I got it, or see what I will do. And it's amazing testament to you too for being able to surrender like that. Now we see the results.
Yeah, I think it's important to bring in the community so that everyone can share in the glory of the answered prayer and the faith building of it. Instead of my family tends to keep things to themselves until after everything's dead and gone, really is the horrible way to put it. But it's just not helpful. Like none of us were able to pray and none of us were able to step in and help. So I think that's great that you did that.
It was honestly a lifeline for me. It was a way for me to unload the emotion and all of the information that kept coming to us and all of the decisions that we had to make. I would just sit down in her room and just type out the latest information that they gave us and send it out. And then I would, start getting replies on Facebook that they were praying, or I would start getting replies in our church prayer group saying that they were praying, or my family group saying the same thing. Every time time that would happen, it was a comfort for me to know that I didn't have to take the burden, that I was handing it out to other people to help me with, because I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't.
That's a great point, in that our technology, there's so many negative things about it, but that's really putting it to a great use, and one that, I feel like God is happy with us being able to utilize it in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would apologize and say, I'm really sorry. I feel like I'm putting way too much out here. And I would have people say, no, we are loving that you're giving us these updates. We want to know what the latest is. And we love that you're asking for specific prayers so we know what to pray for.
With where our world's at, everyone's really craving a good story and a comeback and a redemption story, So everyone wants it to be a win. Everyone wants to see the answered prayer so that they can build their faith too in what they're going through in their own personal life. So it's cool that you were willing to share your family's journey.
It was just much too obvious what an incredible miracle it was to keep that to ourselves.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It was. I mean, it's amazing the turnaround that she had.
Mm-hmm.
And I was searching. Yeah, within a week. You're right. I remember if I hadn't heard anything lately, I would search up your profile and, okay, what's Rhonda posted lately? We say that we should be in constant prayer. That's how I felt for Becky that whole time, because I was so invested and cared so much. And I think you take that times thousands of people that were praying for her, like what a blessing. And we were all kind of, like you're saying, Amanda, in on it together, asking God to just carry it all through.
I will forever be grateful to everyone that prayed for her, because like I said, at that time, I did not have the capacity. You cry out to God. That's all I could just say is, please, God.
Mm-hmm.
How has it changed your relationship with God since? Are you bolder, or what kind of things have you shifted into?
I truly believe the faith of a mustard seed. Before you hear about these miracles, and sometimes the miracles that you hear about are, okay, yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, that's cool. You know what I mean? It's like, that's a pretty okay miracle, which they are all great miracles. But sometimes you see something that is so incredibly almost impossible. And that's what this felt like to me. We truly expected to go say goodbye. And if you would have told me on the 3rd, when we got down to Little Rock, just give it a couple of months and she will be completely different from today, I would never have believed it, because she was completely not okay in that moment.
Did the doctors say it was a miracle?
Yes. Most of our doctors, I'm not sure what their beliefs were, but they were very adamant in, she is very, very sick and she is not likely to recover from this. And I know our very last day when we were down there, the doctor that always would tell us the hard truths. And I was like, I don't like what you're saying to me.
Not what I want to hear.
Yeah, it's not what I want to hear. But he was being truthful with us. And then whenever it got to the point where he was saying, now we are looking toward recovery, I felt like we were winning, because he was telling us that this is great. And he showed us her CT scan on day 1, how bad it was versus when she was getting ready to leave Little Rock. And he said that she absolutely was a miracle, because it could have easily gone the other way. And he said if her brain would have continued to swell, she would have hemorrhaged, and there's no coming back from that. She would have had brain damage.
Yeah. Do you remember the turning point? Was there a particular point where you realized, or was it more gradual?
It felt like it happened really, really fast in Little Rock. We got down there. She was intubated. She was out of it. And I couldn't sleep. So I would wake up 2 or 3 times at night, and I would call the hospital and I would talk to her nurse, and they would do tests every however many hours. And so I was always like, what are her numbers for her liver? What are her numbers for her ammonia levels? And every time it would just be lower and lower and lower. I started being like, we might actually see good results here. And when within a week, literally within a week, she was awake. We didn't realize it at the time. After talking to her since then, she was still really out of it for a while. She wasn't completely clear and coherent, but she could communicate with us. She struggled to speak at first because of the tube, but once her vocal cords started to heal, she was able to speak. She didn't have any major damage.
That's amazing. I can almost feel, though, like the hope growing in you every time you got a result report back, and it's a little bit better and a little bit better. That almost gives me goosebumps to say, okay, God was taking it in a completely different direction than what everyone was expecting. And that's our God.
Yes, because we are quick to believe man and say, there's no hope. She's not going to make it. And had I not had my faith, I think that I would have accepted that there was no hope, and I wouldn't have just fallen on my knees and just asked God to take over. I think that's what helped me, is just letting him take over. And sometimes you want to take it back. I still want to take it back. But if you just trust and have faith and believe that he'll handle it, he will.
It's also amazing to me that we often think, God, why me? Why is this happening in my life? But as I hear you say that story, not that God doesn't allow things in people's lives who are not as faithful, because he certainly does, to happen that we don't want to happen or that they don't want to happen. But this happening to you and you being such a faithful person and being able to turn it over to God, this did allow God to do a work that then showed so many people what can happen when someone with faith does allow him to work like that.
Well, and I can tell you that my faith was tested with this. When they told us that she wasn't likely to make it, I screamed. I was angry. I was extremely upset. I was mad. The whole range of emotions, I just couldn't wrap my head around that she was just fine a week ago and now she is going to be gone. So it was tough.
Yeah, your faith was tested for sure. I guess, what is the one thing that you want listeners to take away from this story and remember?
I think that when you are at your absolute lowest, that you need to trust God and have faith. Even if you don't have the words to speak and you can't pray, he will hear your cry and he will listen. You just have to allow that to happen.
That makes me emotional, because I know in my life, and I'm sure in all of our listeners' lives, I know, Amanda, you and I have talked about it. Sometimes, all you can muster is just a cry for help. But, I also think we're not worried at that point about what to say when we pray, having the right words. That is our true heart, just crying out for the Lord. I think that's when he'll help us and get us through. And like you said, it may not be the outcome we're looking for, but God's got a reason for it. God's got a plan, and he's working in the way that he knows best.
Exactly. Because the things that I wanted, when I didn't get them, it was better. I got something better out of the situation.
I think that's a great ending sentence.
You got something better.
Yeah, it doesn't turn out the way you want, and possibly hope he could think out of the box and do something better. He's way more creative than our little brains are.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
We had a few questions for you. One of which was, when you were praying for your mom, did you pray for God's will to be done no matter what, or did you ask for her to be healed?
I think it was a little of both. Obviously, you selfishly want them to be healed, but you also want God's will to be done. Sometimes that doesn't end up the way you want it to be. But yeah, I don't know that I really truly could choose one way or the other. I just know that I hoped he wanted the same thing I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that she's here for a reason. I know everyone at church was saying what an amazing testimony and what a miracle she was. So it didn't just impact my family, it impacted our church. It impacted all of our friends on Facebook. There are so many people that it touched. And I think maybe that might have been part of his plan.
Definitely. Yeah. I remember someone from our church saying sometimes God allows these things to build all of our faith. Sometimes we need a reminder that he's there and he's in control. And what a big reminder this was for so many people. I mean, it really touched a lot of lives.
Well, and I know that somebody said at one point there was an altar call the week Mom was in the hospital in Little Rock, and that so many people were just in tears and so many people went to the front. I know that there were several that were impacted. One in particular, I won't name his name, but he was extremely upset because he loves Mom so much. And it's important to know that people care about you, and how much you've touched their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's incredible what a wonderful church family we have, and just how much you guys mean to us and how much Mom means to everyone.
She does. She's so special. And how does does she feel? I know she's not on here and I don't want to ask you to speak for her, but she's the product of a miracle. That's how it really is, I think. How does she feel about it?
I have told her several different times in different ways, Mom, we thought you were going to die. We thought we were going to lose you. And I don't think it really truly clicked for her until like several weeks into her hospital stay. And I think that's the point where she started getting clarity and she started to understand what was going on. And she said, I'm here for a reason. God has a plan for me.
I know she's got to feel that in her heart for sure after coming through that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you're talking about God wants to get the glory and have a lot of people involved in the miracle. The enemy's doing the same exact thing. He's trying to take out a whole church with something, or he's trying to create disbelief with a large group at a time. So I love that God's showing up and showing off in the opposite direction, right? Because we need to see those miracle stories in order to bolster our faith in our own lives.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. This year has been a lot for our family. Every single month, I'm like, next month should be better.
We're only 4 months in, girl.
I know. Oh, I was like,
Gotta get
2026,
better.
go on.
Well, I think the fact that you were able to stay strong, and I meant it when I said you were emotionally strong. I mean, you really had us all fooled if you weren't, but I know that you leaned on God and I know you leaned on others. And Amanda and I actually just got through talking about how we can't shoulder things alone. And I'm so happy and grateful that you allowed other people to pray with you and for you and be there for you.
I didn't allow it. I had to let it happen. I couldn't do otherwise.
Maybe that's another way that God worked in this whole situation, is to show you that it's okay to do that and that people are here for you. And, there's probably so many things that God did throughout that time period that we are just even realizing or seeing.
100%. Yes.
Such a cool story. I'm so grateful that you shared it with us, and hopefully our audience enjoyed hearing it. I know they did, and are going to take a lot from it and share it with others still, because it really was a true testament to what God can do and what he's willing to do when we ask him.
And I think it's a testament to why a community is so important.
I agree. Yes. There's always the conversation of, I don't need to go to church. I can read my Bible at home. But if you don't have a church family, you're missing out on so much.
Yeah, agreed. Especially when you're in a huge city, to have that small town feel. Because I go to a small church in a big city, and it's huge to be known in your small community when you walk in the door instead of a mega church like I used to go to.
Yeah, because you're nameless and faceless otherwise.
Yeah, there were people lining up to pray with you and for you. And that wouldn't have happened if you were just one of many faces or names.
Yep.
I'm just so grateful for everyone that prayed.
Yeah.
It's hard to show our gratitude for things like this. Sometimes to say thank you doesn't feel like quite enough. But hearing this story, I think we can all feel how huge and important it was. Thank you again for sharing it.
Anytime.
Well, now it's recorded in a legacy piece for a reminder for everyone. That's why we're doing this series, is to really record stuff down into legacy so that we don't forget what God's doing in our lives.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one thing with all of the Facebook posts. I tagged Mom on every one of those so that when your Facebook memories come up next year,
oh, cool,
she'll actually understand and see how much happened.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, very cool. Again, using technology in a way that helps us all.
For the good.
That's right. And Amanda, I think the same thing is true. Satan's using technology for a lot of negatives. So also combating that with doing what you're doing, Rhonda.
I mean, that's the thing. If you're angry at something that's happening in the world, figure out a way to do the exact opposite and make a difference in the positive way. Because everything has pros and cons. So
I love that.
Find the pro and really push the pro instead of the con.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Okay. Well, thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you, Rhonda. Yeah. And again, we're so excited about this Answered Prayers series, and we'll be bringing you more of these stories, but this was a great first one.
Yeah. And if you have a story that you'd like to share and tell your testimony in Answered Prayer, just message us at info@stillwithpurpose.com. Thanks so much for joining us today. We know your time is valuable and we're truly grateful you spent part of it with us. We hope this conversation stays with you and helps you move through the week with more clarity, peace, and purpose.
Be sure to visit us at stillwithpurpose.com. And there you can read our bios, sign up for email encouragement and updates on exciting announcements, and also join our private Facebook community.
And if Still with Purpose has encouraged you in any way, please remember to follow, leave a quick review, and share with a friend. It helps more people find these conversations. Have a phenomenal week, and we'll see you next time.